Hey traders and investors, we're going to talk about the psychedelic sector and the cannabis space, and we're going to start with a bit off the top of my head and just sharing thoughts and what I'm looking for the rest of the year and beyond. And then we'll look at the charts and technical analysis and point out some key levels and things that I need to see as far as shifts in momentum and who's standing out stronger and weaker and things like that. So had a little bit of an epiphany today and really just solidified things that I've already been feeling. And for me, there are some pieces of the puzzle that click together as far as, ensuring that I'm shifting my focus where heading into the fall, I've said it many times in recent videos where I am looking for some bullish sentiment heading into November voting season. We know the broader stock market and the sentiment there is going to be critical. I'm going to talk about a key setup is what would be the ideal scenario as far as what we could see shape up into the fall. But I have decided to shift my focus, and this is not bashing cannabis in any way. It's just recognizing, in my opinion, where there's going to be more opportunity. And you have to keep in mind, of course, I am a trader. So whether you want to argue, whose balance sheets are going to be better in 5 years, I don't care at all. I care about where there's hype and momentum and where there's opportunity for profit. That is why I am clicking these buttons and playing this game. So heading into fall voting season, I'm going to be focusing a bit more on the psychedelic space than on the cannabis names for a few reasons. The first is the psychedelic names are showing us more strength than cannabis right now. But something that really clicked for me and is over the last 12 years that I've been trading, my specialty has been capitalizing on hype sectors, euphoria runs, and then keeping my gains. Because there was one time back in the penny stock days where I gave it all back, and I know some of you are in that boat as far as holding cannabis names and you had gains and you gave it all back. That happens to everybody. It only happens to the good traders or investors once. And it happened to me once, and I will never let that happen again. And so it's our lesson that we learn. But for me, the key thing that had me shift my focus from cannabis to psychedelics is what I would call the funnel effect. So we know for a hype and euphoria run, and the ones that I've experienced were cannabis penny stocks, 2010 to 2014, the 3D printing sector. If you check out DDD and SSYS, look what they did. I forget when, maybe 2015. They did the same thing cannabis did, up hundreds of percent, gave back 97%. The crypto space multiple times, twice now in the last 5 years. And of course, Canadian cannabis, where most of you watching this video probably know me from. So the key, let's say we're making a big soup, and the soup is big gains in euphoria breakouts. The key things you need are the catalyst, which is usually political. Political catalysts are great for significant follow through. Just recently, we saw the solar sector get, some positive outcome of a bill that was passed, and the solar sector just shot up 10-20% over the last 2 weeks of trading. So political catalysts are great. Other kinds of catalysts can be new technology. 3D printing was new technology. Crypto was new technology. So that's another catalyst as well. And so the catalyst that we're looking at for these sectors would be political. And again, heading into November, there are certain states that are going to be looking to decriminalize and legalize psychedelics. And then, of course, legalizing medical and recreational cannabis. So we've got that as a major factor. We need media attention, right? If retail traders, if they're going to hear about it, we need CNBC to talk about it. We need the articles to be pumping out. We need social media to be all over it. We need the Twitter pumpers to be telling all their people about it. That's definitely an aspect of hype and FOMO and euphoria. And in my opinion, the big shift for me today, the realization was the funnel effect. So the funnel effect to me is in 2010, when I started trading cannabis names, you literally had 8 penny stocks that you could choose from. You want to put money in hemp or cannabis in a public market, you have 8 choices. That is it. So if there's 10 million retail dollars, they're only going into one of these 8 names. If there's 10 million retail dollars right now, you have dozens and dozens and dozens of choices in the cannabis space. You've got dozens of Canadian names. You've got dozens of US names. You've got the secondary services. You've got IIPR, you've got GRWG, you've got names that don't touch the plant, you got names that touch the plant, you got ETFs, you've got all of these things that dilute the funnel effect. So the psychedelic space is reminding me of cannabis's early days because there are only a handful of names. And granted, there's more penny stocks than legitimate names. There's some names that are on the NASDAQ, but the funnel effect is there as far as there's not many choices that you have if you're looking to put money in to psychedelics. And the catalyst, it's not new technology. Again, the catalyst would be the political catalyst, but also new healthcare. So Netflix is helping that. The shift in sentiment is key. Back in 2010, when I got interested in the sector, California was voting on Prop 19, which failed, but we could see, okay, the shift is on. The shift is now accelerating for the general population's mindset shift to be underway. And we're seeing that in the psychedelic space, and you've got the Netflix documentaries, and you've got fantastic fungi from, his name slipped in my head, Paul Stamets. But you're seeing the shift now, and it's becoming more generally accepted as far as, there is some potential here. And again, is this the potential for a 10-year investment? I'm not in the game for that. And I went out just recently in North Carolina, and I visited a nature retreat center, and they do ketamine therapy sessions there, and they're certainly going to be doing psilocybin when that becomes a thing. So I just gave it a little tour, just curious what's out there. And it's a solid little business model, but it's not going to be, a big money maker. And that's not the point. And when you have, you only need a few sessions perhaps with these medicines as opposed to 30 years of dependency, those are very different models of pharmaceutical recurring revenue. But again, I'm in it for the move that sees valuations get stupid and for all-time high breakouts. That's the other piece of the puzzle that is needed for the soup. You need blue sky breakouts, price discovery, and I'm looking for places where a little bit of dollar volume goes a long way. So that is my baseline mindset of how I'm approaching this now, approaching both of these sectors. And again, I will play both of these sectors. I day trade Canadian cannabis in both directions. I usually swing trade US cannabis when the stars align for things to be shaping up. And for psychedelic, I will most likely be swing trading as well as there's less liquidity. For full disclosure, currently in this moment, I have no US cannabis exposure, no Canadian exposure, and I did grab some ATAI psychedelic exposure today, which we will look at in just a moment. But I might jump right back in MSOS next week, and I'll show you why. I traded this recent bounce, but locked in all the profit, a bit unsure of where we were standing in the short term. So we're going to start with the broader market first, and then we'll break it down. And in the recent videos, I've been putting the psychedelic names first because technically speaking, they were showing us significant relative strength comparative to cannabis. So that was enough for me to shift attention as far as my videos go. But the more that we see opportunity in this sector, the more I'm going to put out videos. I foresee a future where I'm going to be putting out 3 psychedelic sector videos a week when we're in the thick of the euphoria. And my goal will be maximize profit, help people protect their gains and not give it back. And that is going to require you selling on the way up into some strength and scaling out. But let's not put the cart before the horse because we need those big moves first. So the S&P 500, we were in a very fearful environment, recession, inflation, end of the world, and everybody, I've never seen my social media since maybe 8 years. I've been really paying attention to social media while trading, and I've never seen it this bearish. And so we found a bottom. A fear bottom has been set. Is it the bottom? Tough to say, obviously, but I am convinced that the bottom's in for a good bit of time here. And I say that because in my opinion, I'm viewing this just as the low, and this entire bounce is just one move. And we know that we need trend changes if we're going to see significant follow through and shifts in momentum. So I will be looking for a weekly higher low to be the result of the next consolidation. And the mindset when that happens is you have all the money that is cash on the sidelines right now that says, well, did I just miss the dip buying opportunity of the year? Now that we are up 16% off the lows, is that head math right? And so those people, 15%, those people will be the ones that are buying the higher low, saying, all right, well, I got a second chance now. I can buy this consolidation, and it's not ideal, but it's, my entry opportunity. It's the best I can get. We're testing weekly resistance right now. If we were to pull back here, I'd be watching for an inverse head and shoulders setup, which is just a change from a downtrend to an uptrend. But essentially, the most important factor in what we're looking for these sectors and the influence of the broader market is fear done. And are we going to hit fresh fear lows? Because if we hit fresh fear lows, everything's off the table for me and I have to establish a new game plan. But I'm going to be moving forward anticipating that our fear lows are in for now. And whether you agree with that or not doesn't really matter too much. We can move on from there. If you don't agree and you think we're heading to fresh lows, then it's going to influence your game plan and how you approach these other sectors. Because obviously if the broader market hits new fresh fear lows, these sectors will be negatively impacted by that, especially because they are some of the highest risk, highest reward names. Other high risk, high reward names are performing well. And we see, cryptocurrency names I often use as a comparison. Ethereum from its fear low has bounced over 100%, which means we need to drop 50% plus from where we stand right now if we're going to see fresh lows. We have sectors like the biotech sector absolutely breaking out from its fear bottom. We just got absolutely crushed. I mean, this looks like the cannabis sector minus the last 2 months of bounce, but a pullback of 65% and the prolonged weakness finally shifting into some significant bull momentum. So the biotech sector is definitely higher risk, higher reward. Even these, Reddit pumpers like AMC and GME, look at the day we had today. We're seeing confidence enough that we're in an environment now where we're looking for laggards. Like, oh man, these moves are already 30, 40% off their lows. Who else is going to run? So even, Cathie Wood's ARK, I'm keeping an eye out at this point to see if it can get a solid leg up here to try and join as a laggard. But bottom line is, over the last few weeks, the higher risk, higher reward names have been performing well, and the psychedelic space is a part of that. But again, we always got to be thinking of the broader market as a backdrop and watching the big thing for the next month. When we top out, which we have not done yet, but when we top out, do we see the weekly trend change confirm? Probabilities for me, let's say, I'm 55% believe that a bottom is in. If you confirm a weekly trend change, I'm going up to 70%. So it will be very notable for me. And so how that ties in here is I'm going to be looking to establish some positions in these sectors next weekly consolidation, because in an ideal world, the best possible setup heading into voting season would be weekly consolidation in this sector, in the broader market, which would negatively impact the sectors, looking for that to lead to some entries. And then if we confirm the weekly trend change, next thing you know, we're heading into the fall and we're maybe 4 to 6 weeks away from the voting season with a fresh surge of bull confidence in markets. And when you get that bull confidence in markets, that's when people start throwing their money around, and that's when things can go up. So in an ideal world, weekly consolidation, look for entries on weekly consolidation, weekly trend change confirmed, significant amount of fear alleviated. I mean, if you confirm a weekly trend change, we're going to start talking about all-time highs, as crazy as that sounds. But at this point in time, and again, it's a big if we confirm the weekly trend changes, but we have retraced on the S&P 500 half of the entire pullback. You look at our fib retracement here, and right now, 45%. So the entire drop that we've seen in this year, 7 months of this year, we've gotten 45% of that back already. And if you confirm a weekly trend change, you're then getting 55 to 60% of that back. So that's the backdrop. Now let's look at our individual names. And again, the psychedelic names are standing out in a big way. Look at CMPS. We want names to be going up if we are bullish. CMPS has been in a daily uptrend. We bottomed at 654. We are now up 220 whatever percent. In the blink of an eye, it took place over weeks, but man, it really came out of nowhere. And this was when the daily trend changed. And the amount of times where I talk about, the cannabis space, I don't care if I nail the bottom because of the opportunity when the real shift is on. The bull break took place at $9 to confirm the daily trend change. That was already 40% off the lows. And now we're up 9 to 20. There's another 100% opportunity. So you could have missed 40% of the bounce and gotten 100% returns. And this isn't even, FOMO euphoria. This is one individual name that is performing really well in the sector. And the bottom is in here as far as I'm concerned. Unless this company is a scam and collapses. And again, I'm not the guy to go to for the fundamental analysis. I'm not reading these balance sheets for these companies. I'm trading the charts. So yes, there are black swan events that could happen, but what's the probability that CMPS is going to drop 68% from where we stand right now to fresh lows? I think that's about a 3% chance. We had a bullish reaction to earnings. We've got uptrends and a bullish reaction to earnings and volume. So if we're looking at the psychedelic sector, we can say that Compass is the CGC of old. So when CGC was running the show for Canadian MJ back in 2016-17 and into the top, that's CMPS. This is our guide for the sector, and its bullish earnings reaction was seen by other sector peers, and it benefited them. So look at CMPS. The next time we consolidate on the weekly time frame, you better believe people are going to be buying this dip, saying, oh man, did I miss that bottom? CMPS, just like that, is at the highest level that we've seen almost of the entire year. And there's tons of space for a weekly higher low to form next consolidation. In an ideal world, any weekly consolidation holds these EMAs on a back test and holds them as support and then sees continuation. We will eventually someday need a monthly trend change. It's going to take a long time to develop. If we're talking retracements here from this previous peak, we still have only retraced 35% of that drop. But it's big enough of a move that when we do top out, which again, there is no indication, we had a very strong end of the week, but once we top out, I will anticipate that a monthly high or low will be the result of that next consolidation to try and shape up a monthly trend change. But CMPS has the dollar volume as well for the sector. Its 20-day average volume, roughly speaking, is, $6 million a day, which again is still very small. And when I'm talking funnel effect, this is what I'm talking about. The big boy of the sector is putting up $6 to $8 million a day. So what happens when we see $100 million interested in the sector? And if we look at the sector ETF, we will, and now let's go on to, so sector ETF, PSIL, is traded on the, I think it's NYSE. So you look at this and say, oh, that's some solid bull volume, right? Increasing bull volume. All right, let's get the party started. And then you look at it and see 80,000 shares traded. I mean, that is, we're talking, quick math, $100,000. So the dollar volume is dirt low. I don't know if that's a saying, but it is now. It's non-existent. So remember when MSOS started trading? My dog is snoring. Hey, sweet. Hey, you're being distracted, bud. Cuckoo. So remember when MSOS started trading? What was the dollar volume? Non-existent. It was a lot more, granted. It was, $600,000 in a day. But it started trading, and it was just nothing. And we knew, watch for the volume. When the volume comes in, it's a signal for us. And then this orange line down here is your 20-day average volume, and it just ramped up during that entire run. And the run, part of it was blue sky breakout, euphoria, social media, MSO gang. The catalyst was the shift in the Senate and the House and the presidency going Democrat. That was a political backdrop. Again, one of the ingredients. And the volume, we did back here, we're trading volume of, $600,000 a day, and we top out trading $100 million a day plus. So that is the ramp up in volume that we're looking for on PSIL. watch for when we start trading $1 million a day. That will be very telling. This ETF is bottoming out. I mean, it's just been a disaster since inception, but this is a monthly stair-step bull break with a lower high every single month. And Google TheChartGuys stair-step, I have a video talking about this trading style, but that broke bull. So the shift is underway. It's just a question of how much follow-through do we get. And we can see the volume is picking up. Again, it's non-existent. The entire volume for the week is $600,000. So again, that's a good thing. It's not a good thing for I want to load up right now unless you're extremely aggressive. It's a good thing telling me that when money wants to come into this space, it's going to be very thinly traded, and a little bit of dollar volume is going to go a very long way moving these names. And so I'm watching for the same thing. Can PSIL start giving us $500,000 a day, $1 million a day, $3 million a day? If it does, its largest holdings will benefit in the same way that there was the positive catalyst, I forget the words that I'm looking for, but the not self-fulfilling prophecy. Anyways, the money pouring into MSOS led to MSOS buying the individual names, leading to the individual names going up, leading to MSOS. It was just this perpetuating cycle in blue sky breakout that led to wild valuations. And again, we're going to get to a point in this sector where you're going to look around at the market caps and say, this makes no sense. And that is the first indication to take some off the table because yes, it does not make sense and it will not last. But we're here for that opportunity while it does last. We're going to get in before the hype and the euphoria, and that is potentially starting to shift. We're nowhere near hype and euphoria in this sector, but there is a shift underway. Again, we just based out for months, and now we're hitting the highest levels we've seen in months. So keep an eye on PSIL. Its largest holdings are CMPS, CYBN, ATAI. That's all I looked at, but I assume MNMD. And again, there's a lot of names in this sector, like NUMI, that are little penny stocks, and they will move as well. I personally want to be trading with a bit larger capital size, and so I'm going to be sticking with CMPS, ATAI as my main two. It used to be MNMD, but MNMD had bearish news to a reverse split. And this shows you the risk part of this sector, because from the low of yesterday to the low of today, we dropped 15%. And so I'm surprised the reverse split had that kind of reaction, because if they want to stay on the NASDAQ, they have to reverse split to meet the listing criteria. But this has derailed this name, and it was weaker before. This entire bounce here, we could see MNMD is weaker than ATAI, and it's weaker than CMPS. And sometimes you can see news on the charts before it comes out, and maybe, that's part of the reason, this impending reverse split. So we have earnings coming up for the sector as well. CMPS already reported, but other individual names will have their earnings. And MNMD is looking back at its recent low of 58 cents. For anything to shift here, we have to hold 58 and break 78. So I'm going to keep one eye on this name, but it's CMPS and ATAI for me. ATAI has been being bought by one of Cathie Wood's ETFs. That's been helping the price as far as some fairly steady buying pressure. You can see the volume today and the close at the high of the day is in response to CMPS earnings reaction. And we're testing the high right now, and why I have a position in ATAI, since inception, it has never had a weekly uptrend ever. And again, a weekly uptrend is a higher low and a higher high. And we're knocking on the door of seeing the first weekly uptrend in the history of this stock. My stop is under 350. If 351 breaks, that is a big red flag to me. That's our higher low. That's our stair step up. That must hold. We need a break of 451 to have the first weekly uptrend ever, and that will then give us the highest price that we've seen in 3 months. And then its monthly bounce will be underway, trying to follow along behind CMPS. I'm interested in CMPS, but I've got to wait for daily consolidation at a bare minimum because of how extended it is. Daily EMA 12 is a nice visual guide. First hourly oversold conditions generally is a good time to buy into a lot of strength. And you can see the last time we hit hourly oversold, was one of the better buying. That was the daily higher low. And I love when hourly oversold conditions align with daily EMA 12 support. As far as technical trading, that's a confluence of signals for me. So I was not on top of that, and nor would I have been, because earnings are a coin flip. But now that we have this positive earnings reaction, I'm willing to be a little bit more risk on with names that have not reported yet. But for me, at a bare minimum, I need daily consolidation if I'm going to be looking for an entry here. And again, ideally, it's weekly consolidation at this point if I'm looking longer term. And this is the kind of thing where I want some positions in my IRA for swing trading. And then when the big hype and euphoria gets going, I will be aggressively day trading to go into position sizes that are way larger than I'm comfortable swinging, but that takes advantage of moves up during the day. So I will be day trading with larger position sizes, swing trading with smaller position sizes, and I shifted what I just said there to not if, when, because I am extremely confident that this sector is going to go through a euphoria cycle. And I have this feeling, people call it their gut. For me, I call it when my bones vibrate. And it happened when Ethereum was under $100 in 2017. And it happened with Canadian cannabis when I realized that the play was to take crypto profits into Canadian MJ. It's only happened a couple times in my trading career, but I get it when I think about this opportunity with this sector that is coming when we get all those little ingredients in the pot at the same time for that euphoria soup. This video is getting way too long. Thanks for sticking with me. CYBN also is trying to shape up the first weekly trend change. 1 second. ATAI volume, dollar volume average, roughly speaking, we're looking at about 6 million a day. So it is fairly significant. But again, what if $50 million comes into that ETF? What if $50 million comes into ATAI in one day? It's very thinly traded and it will respond significantly. We went 10% off the low of today, and that's actually not the average volume. That was the volume today. So that was a high volume day. $6 million, 10% move up after an initial pullback. The average volume is more like $3.7 million a day. CYBN also trying for the first weekly uptrend since the all-time highs. And again, look at this. How familiar does this look? We pulled back 90% almost from that previous top. If we break 86 cents, we'll be at the highest levels that we've seen in 5 months, and the shift will be underway, increasing bull volume, rounding out bottom, and then we zoom out. We know we're going to scout a monthly lower high, but that will certainly be at least a midterm momentum shift. And I'm not interested as much in this name because the dollar volume, you're looking at less than $1 million traded a day. On average, it's more like $500,000. But these penny stocks are going to be higher risk, higher reward. So again, MUMI is another one. RVV is another one. I don't know them all off the top of my head, but I'm just not interested in the really low dollar volume. I mean, RVV here traded like $30,000 in an entire day. That's not enough. So that's my psychedelic spiel. And that's what I'm looking for as far as bang for your buck, which is a good album by Ugly Duckling. But bang for your buck, I want a little bit of dollar volume to go a long way. And so if you get big money that knows how to play this game and you get retail FOMO in combination, that's certainly some big money. And also, bag holders are present in these names, absolutely. But again, look at how easily CMPS is working through 5, 6, 7 months of bag holders. And then you look at cannabis names, and in my opinion, there's a lot more overhead dollar volume that has to be worked through. So $100 million bullish in cannabis is not going to see as large a percentage move as $100 million in psychedelics. It's got the funnel effect, which for me was the focus shifter today, where I realized I'm focusing more on psychedelics than cannabis into the fall because of the funnel effect, because of the liquidity, and because a little bit of dollar volume will go a lot further. So now on to cannabis, and I'm only going to look at a handful of names here. Cannabis can see a bull break here, and it looks to me like TLRY is seeing accumulation. TLRY has been pinned below some key short-term resistance levels the past few days and just churning a significant amount of shares. I mean, this is where the dollar volume is. We're trading $100 million a day on average, more than that. So this is where the big money is playing the cannabis sector. And it's a potential little 4-hour cup and handle, essentially where I've talked about how TLRY has not seen a 2-day uptrend. No, it wasn't TLRY. I guess it was CGC. But anyways, we're seeing the shift here as well. We're basing out, and if we can get over 416, I always just think of the very comfortable shorts that have been killing it in this sector. And you want to put as many of them underwater as possible. So if you get over 416, you then put anybody that has shorted this name in the red for the last 2 months. If you get over 540, you then put anybody that's shorted for the last 4 months underwater, 3 months. So what has to happen here is a break of 416, and bears did defend that resistance yesterday with a hard rejection. So yesterday I bought the $4 break, took a little bit of profit into strength, and then bailed back at $4 today because of that double top rejection. But keep an eye out for the volume. But again, you see $100 million here moves the price 6%. So what does that mean? It means it's very liquid. And if you put $100 million on any of the psychedelic names that we just talked about, you're going 20% bare minimum. So you have ingrained market makers with huge amounts of shares on the bid and the ask, and they're creating the market. And you don't have those ingrained market makers in the psychedelic space because of its infancy. So 380 is a triple bottom here. Might as well call it 379. So 379, low of the last 3 days. So the play has been buying off that support and selling around $4 for 3 days. And so we'll see which direction we break on Monday or Tuesday. If we break 379, then we're just going to remain within a tightening range, and we'll be watching for an equilibrium type setup, and we'll then look for a higher low and a continued tightening range to form. And if we get the bull break over 416, our monthly bounce is then going to be underway. And again, we already saw psychedelic names with some monthly bounces underway. So I do expect these sectors to trade similarly, but who's going to go up more percentage-wise is what it boils down to. I'm going to have my hands in both for sure. So I am watching TLRY very closely next week. If 379 breaks, I take my eye off it a bit and I watch it a bit less attentively. But if 379 holds and 416 breaks, we can get some momentum and some follow through. Definitely want to see increasing bull volume if that were to happen. CGC had bearish earnings. So again, why am I focused on psychedelics? Well, they're in uptrends and they had a bullish earnings reaction as opposed to Canopy here, which is in a downtrend and had a bearish earnings reaction. The bulls did buy that dip, but this is the equilibrium that TLRY could form if 379 breaks. But keep an eye out how this tightening range breaks because it just builds up pressure. This is shaking the soda can. And the tighter it gets, the more shook up it is. And then when you get the break in one direction or the other, you look for that follow through and that volume and volatility spike. So 234 is the most important support for me, and 303 is the most important resistance. If you break 303, you've got to ensure that you break 318 shortly after. But again, I'm not giving up on these sectors, and I will, and I have been day trading. I shorted CGC today because I saw this bounce and said, all right, well, we're just looking for an hourly lower high. Shorted it at 273, covered half at 270 real quick just to be risk-free, covered the other half at 264, just a little day trade win. And again, I cannot stress enough, I know a lot of you, most of you are not full-time traders or anything like that, but when I have a swing trade on MSOS on, and I can short Canadian cannabis to sit through hourly consolidation that I know is inevitable, it really helps me hold those positions. Cron is stronger than TLRY and CGC. How can I say that? Well, we got earnings coming up, but it hit the highest level on Wednesday that it has seen in multiple months. Neither TLRY or CGC did that. The reason I'm not focused on Cron is dollar volume. Average dollar volume here is $6 million. TLRY, 100 million. CGC is more like 30 million. So it's just not enough dollar volume. But if I had to rank them, technically speaking, is who's stronger, Cron is stronger than TLRY and CGC right now. Other names in the sector, ACB. And again, you know, ACB is never going back to all-time highs. So that's why I want I just imagine ACB is just this beat up 80-year-old cigarette, beer smoking, just worn down. And you've got the fresh, young psychedelic sector that hasn't been abused like this. So that's part of the reason of where my focus is. You got VFF, but we get the general idea. Trying for a momentum shift, but bulls still have proving to do with some of these resistance levels. US cannabis has been weaker than Canadian cannabis the last couple of weeks. It had a nice little bounce there, and I was talking about this bounce. By the way, I keep getting messages from people like, why did you abandon the cannabis sector? We're starting to get some bounces, and you're just not talking about it anymore. I talk about it in my daily market videos. I talked about it this week a good bit, TLRY, and I update, what I'm doing with my MSOS swing trade. So just because I don't have a specific cannabis video doesn't mean I'm not talking about it. And I also talk about it on Twitter as well. So you got to check in if you want to hear about it. So played the MSOS bounce and flipped it a few times. I can't remember exactly how it went. It was green, which was nice. I've definitely tried some of these bounces in the past where I ended up break even or small red. Never bag holding, but I exited knowing that weekly EMA 12 was a key resistance level that we've rejected from forever and that was approaching. And so when I saw $13 as a double top of psychological resistance, I said, all right, that's my exit signal as far as, I exited the last of my position once 1282 broke, 1182. Then we had a triple top this past week at $12. So clearly psychological levels coming into play. But the bear break today was bought up nicely. And GTBIF had earnings, and it had a good green day today. The rest of the sector has earnings to go. So that's obviously a factor. But we are positioned well. If the bulls can break 1204, for me, the probability significantly increases that we can then break 13 behind it. Again, the broader market matters and what it is doing. The worst case scenario, would you break 1204 and then the broader market pulls back 3% over a couple days? But if we start next week and break 1204, our weekly high or low is quickly set. So we've got a low, the high of the bounce at 13, the higher low can be 1096 if 1204 breaks early next week. And then breaking 13 would confirm the first weekly uptrend on MSOS since the all-time highs. That would be a shift in the character of the chart that would absolutely get our attention because the monthly bounce would then be underway. Lower high every single month, the last 8 months. And all you got to do is look at the biotech sector and look at CMPS for a little bit of a roadmap as to, okay, can this shift take place? Again, the baseline is if these shifts are going to stick as a bottom, we have to see the fear bottom set in the broader market. And we have to just see continued FOMO. We have to see the money on the sidelines itching to get back in when they realize, if it is the case, that they realize that the bottom is in. And again, we put out these broader market videos on a daily basis covering the S&P 500 and the dollar and all our different sectors. And that is definitely a major factor of my analysis in these sectors as well. That's always the base. And then I build the individual sectors analysis on top of that. So MSOS, not giving up on it, because if we can break 1204, our weekly high or low is quickly set. And I'll jump right back into a position. I'll probably risk the profits that I made here. I'll use a position size where my stop loss will be under 1096 if we break 1204. And then if we fail 13 and break that support, I'm out because we're going to be testing our lows. And I'll get back the profit from the bounce. But that's my game plan. Earnings, a little bit of a wild card. We've made it through TLRY and CGC earnings. We've made it through Green Thumb earnings, but a handful more to go. We've made it through Compass, but we still got a bunch left. So feel free to ask any questions. Again, we're going to be covering this sector a lot, and we're going to be all over when this happens, whether it's in the fall, maybe it's in 2 years from now. I have no idea when it will be. I'm looking for it to be into the fall if the stars align, but we'll be here. And I appreciate you tuning in. For those of you who made it through a 40-minute video, congrats.